What's up, people? 10 Grandmasters are playing in Croatia right now. They are playing the Grand Chess Tour Rapid and Blitz. And in the first 2 days of the Rapid section, Firouzja is the leader with 5 points of 6, winning 4 games and drawing just 2. And in this video, we are going to analyze 2 of these victories, one against Daniel Deak Bodian, and the other one against Vincentkeymer, both with black pieces. So let's see the games. There are 3 days of Rapid, so just left 1 day. So Firouzja have huge options of take the tournament. Okay, Deak open with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, and now bishop b4 by Firouzja. That's the most employed defense against the queen gambit in the elite, the Ninso-Indian defense during the last many years. And I really like the Ninso-Indian too. I employ in the past in many tournaments. e3, and here, of course, in this moment, we have many ways to face the Ninso-Indian. With e3, queen c2 is another idea, f3, a3, bishop d2. We have many ways to play, but it's true that black can decide too, because here again black is still having many ways to play. The main move is, well, not the main move, but one of the normal moves is sword castle. d5 is another idea to play later with c5, sword castle. c5 is very interesting too. You can capture on c3, but Firouzja chose the move b6 with a very interesting idea too. There is a game of Anatoly Karpov here with the black pieces, who is maybe the best player ever in the Ninso-Indian 30 years ago. But okay, Karpov doesn't reach a good position from the opening. Deak play bishop d3, who is the main move, bishop b7, knight f3, and here Firouzja decides to capture on c3. I like so much the games of Ninso-India where black captures on c3 because shows the real essence of the Ninso-Indian. Because okay, the Ninso-Indian was invented to capture with the bishop on c3, not to play sword castle and d5. So the real essence of the Ninso-Indian is play bishop b4 to capture on c3, double white pawns, and then try to place the pawns in dark squares and develop the bishop via b7, one day attack the c4 pawn. So that's the real essence of the Ninso-Indian. So happy to see that so many players employing that and finding new ideas, or not new ideas, but sidelines in the Ninso-Indian. B takes, sword castle, and now good move c5. Black only have the right square bishop, so he should play his central pawns in dark squares. And one day maybe the c4 pawn can be weak. Knight d2, knight c6. Okay, here we have some ways to play. For example, rook e1 could be a possibility. Knight b3 is not the strongest move. It's not clear what the knight is doing here on b3. So I prefer rook e1, a more normal development move, d6. And here white can return with the knight to f3. So okay, 2 moves ago, knight d2 have sense because the bishop is in this diagonal, but now with this diagonal close, here return to f3 have more sense. e5, and for example e4, this could be an interesting line. Or bishop b2 here, but okay, after the center goes close, the bishop should return to c1, so the machine like bishop b2, but I don't really understand the move. It's just like white is waiting for what black is going to do. But okay, knight b3 play by Deak, d6, and now good move by white. White should react in the center, because if black just plays the pawn here, later he places here, for example, the rook on c8, and one day the c4 pawn can be weak. So white should react in the center and open his dark square bishop. Black having the dark square bishop, so we should open our dark square bishop, rook c8. I say that the target is the c4 pawn, f3, and now bishop a6, going for the c4 pawn. The idea of have the knight on f3, of course, you can play f3 and open your bishop, but the knight on f3 is avoiding knight a5, which is a very typical move to attack c4. So the knight on b3 have a lot of sense. Bishop b2, now knight e7, the knight cannot go to a5, so this knight is going to go to g6 and keeping this file open. d5, closing the position, and because now black is threatening c takes and bishop takes c4, so white decides to close the c file. Knight g6, bishop e3. Here the machine recommends knight h5 followed by f5, but okay, rook e8 play by Firouzja was completely normal. Rook e1, h6, knight d2, queen d7, a4, good move by Deak. He wants to open this a5 for the rook, and maybe one day he can attack the b6 pawn. Rook e7. Was better rook b8, just a good prophylaxis against a5. Rook e7, and here again rook b8 was the best, trying to play b5. Because okay, he played b5 directly, but after pawn takes, rook takes, c takes b5, bishop takes here, white reach a good position, very pleasant position. But here white made an important positional mistake. And normally, not in all the position, but normally when we have the bishop pair, as white have, we should try to keep the bishop pair. And for that reason, white should play c4. You can think that now this bishop is bad because he have all the central pawns in light square bishops, in light squares. But it's true that this bishop is not good too, of course, this bishop is close. So the best option is just play c4. Not to keep bishop, is to keep the bishop pair. The idea is that here white can keep both bishops. So the bishop pair is very important in chess. And now with, for example, knight f1, here white have a good advantage. Instead of that, he give the bishop pair, losing some advantage. And in the next move, he made another positional mistake, playing queen e4. The problem here of trade queens is that now the c4 pawn is going to be a little bit weak. And we have more space. And when we have more space, it's not useful to trade pieces. For example, in this endgame, black have zero problems in the position. Only the d6 pawn will be weak, but okay, the king can defend that very easy. So black here have zero problems. And the endgame is more or less equal. Firouzja decided to keep queens over the board. Because, okay, Firouzja is a very tactical player, so in his style it used to be better to keep queens. Knight f1, knight h5. Queen c2 here, king h1 was strong, but okay, queen c2 is fine. Knight e5, rook b1, queen d8, and here came the move who give Firouzja the victory. Huge mistake of Deak. The machine doesn't criticize the move so much, because okay, after that he can still defend the position, but I'm not a huge fan of the move. Here, Deak play a6. The problem of a6 is that after rook c6, queen c8, this pawn is going to be very weak. So a6 wasn't a good move, just rook b5 defending is easier. And white is slightly better here. But after e6, now white task is very difficult, because after rook c6, attacking the pawn, rook a1, queen c8, still attacking the pawn, queen e2, rook f6, white position is very hard to defend, especially without time in the clock, because black is going to capture this pawn one day and black is going to have an extra pawn. So okay, queen e2 was the best move to defend, but Deak played rook a2 without time in the clock, and after black capture here, now black have an extra pawn. And Firouzja with more time in the clock, he convert well the position. He backed the pawn, but just to bring the queen to the attack, and now the white king is so far from the attack. So good practical decision, going for the king instead of keep the material. So okay, great game of Firouzja. Now okay, this rook is hanging, that's why white resigned. So great move of Firouzja, coming with an interesting idea in the Inso-Indian. It's true that Deak doesn't play his best chess, and Deak reaches a good position from the opening. But okay, I really appreciate the initiative of Firouzja of play a different the Inso-Indian in a different way. Okay, now we're going to watch another game of Firouzja, this one in the second day, because they play 3 games each day. This one against Vincentkeymer. So 1 second, I'm going to put the face of Keymer. Okay, now we have the face of Keymer. So they play in the 4th round. So let's see the game. This was shorter. And knight f3, d5, and g3. Keymer really likes these systems with knight f3, g3, knight f6, and Firouzja goes for a normal setup against all the queen's pawn and English, and in general against c4, d4, knight f3. With black, you can always place the pawn like here. Against e4, no, but against the rest of the moves, you can make this setup with black. If you are a beginner, it's easy to remember. I never employ this setup, maybe sometimes, but I'm not used to employ this setup. By the way, it's fine, of course. Bishop b7, and now d3 by Keymer. Of course, the machine prefers something like d4 or c4, but okay, Keymer have more different ideas simply. d3, and now b6 by Firouzja, trying to develop the bishop in this diagonal to counter the Catalan bishop. But okay, this white bishop is very good, so we try to counter that. c4, bishop b7, and it's very typical that with the bishop is on b7 or the pawn is on b6, we capture this pawn, and if black recapture, we go for a Carlsbad structure. Here maybe d4 is the move, but the bishop is not perfectly placed on b7. But okay, here Firouzja decides to capture with the knight, who is very typical in this well, with the bishop is on b7, it's very typical to recapture with the knight to not close the b7 bishop. Here d4 was the best move. The pawn on d3 is simply bad. Queen a4. Now queen d7 was slightly better. He played knight d7, but it's logical that queen d7 is better because, okay, here is the same position but with queens over the board, and it's true that the a4 queen is a little bit more active than the black queen. But okay, I said that Firouzja wants the active game, an active game, and he's a very aggressive player, and vincentkeymer have a better technique, so it's a logical decision for Firouzja to keep queens over the board against a technical player when he's a more tactical player. And knight d7 is a good move. Knight d5. Here bishop f6, a little bit strange. c5 was stronger, not allowing, because later this knight is going to land on c6, and the c7 pawn is going to be weak in the future, so c5 is stronger. Bishop f6, e4 is another option here, but okay, knight c6 is playable. Queen c8, d4, and here came a mistake of Firouzja. Okay, this knight is a little bit annoying on c6. So, okay, because he's closing this bishop, he's controlling these squares, and the c7 pawn keeps passive here, and white have a slightly better pawn structure. So for that reason, the tactical resource of knight c5 was very strong. And if pawn takes, of course, queen d7 now taking back the material. So this idea was great to equalize. e6 by Firouzja, not the best move, because after e4, b5, queen c2 here, white is better with the knight on c6. Knight d7, e5, bishop c6, bishop c6, knight c6. And here vincentkeymer made a decisive mistake who cost him the game in just the move. It's incredible that here, with the most normal move, queen takes c6, is more or less obvious that here white is better. Because okay, he has more space in the center, this pawn is retarded here and could be quick one day, and the queen is great here, for example, bishop b7, now bishop c3, later is coming knight c3, knight d4, the rook is coming to c1, and it's clear that here white have the advantage. Black having this tactic of knight b8 because the rook is hanging, so it's very clear that white position is pleasant. But vincentkeymer here went so greedy, and he goes for a line where he takes 2 pawns in the king side, but in counter of that, black is going to develop his pieces very fast, and he's going to launch an attack to the white king. Important mistake of vincentkeymer here: e takes f6, knight takes d4, and f takes d7 was the idea of vincentkeymer, and his idea was just capture these 2 pawns. And okay, it's true that now white have just an extra pawn, and okay, maybe you can think that this pawn is annoying, but okay, white have an extra pawn. But after queen b7, threatening checkmating one move, f3, and long castle here, let's see that black have his 5 pieces developed, and white is still having all his queenside with the pieces in the initial square. Added to that, white king is very unsafe, and black is coming with the knights and the rooks to attack the king and the queen. All the pieces of black are going to attack the king, and white king is very unsafe, and he have no development. So very bad decision here of vincentkeymer to capture the bishop on f6 and go for this line, of course, because after f3 yes, non-castle, and black is winning. Knight d2, f5. Knight d5 was another option, but okay, f5 is logical, not allowing the white queen to return to the defense. Queen a3, knight e5, queen e3, queen d5, and he just captured this pawn and opened the file. And here vincentkeymer resigned. So great victory of alirezafirouzja, playing a very aggressive chess, and huge mistake of vincentkeymer to capture on f6, later on g7, and he went so greedy. So okay, congratulations to Firouzja, who is the leader, just remaining one day to finish the rapid section. So let's see if he can hold the leadership. Bye bye.